Hello, everyone, and welcome to the kickoff for the 13th Ocean of Data Challenge, Our Living Ocean, featuring the Ocean Tracking Network. Before we get started, I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are currently located in the Mi'kmaqi, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship. We would like to acknowledge the indigenous peoples whose traditional lands we are on today and ask that everyone take a moment to consider the territory in which they are situated, as well as their own personal responsibility in the processes of reconciliation. All right, so this is the agenda for tonight. We're going to be going over the Ocean of Data team, then a challenge overview, the speaker presentations, then we're going to go into the challenge details, followed by a Q&A period. Let's get started with an introduction to the Ocean of Data team. Our Ocean of Data team is a collaboration between three groups: DeepSense, COVE, and ShiftKey Labs. My name is Agastya, and I'm the communications specialist with DeepSense. For those of you who don't know, we are an organization based out of the Faculty of Computer Science at Dalhousie University, whose mission is to grow the ocean economy through AI and machine learning. We are an enabling service-based organization and serve as a bridge between industry and the computer science talent pool. We have an innovative model that places interns with the ocean sector companies and provides those interns with expert support throughout their placement, whether that be from our project managers, our cloud engineer, our AI and algorithm experts, or our data analysts. Morgan and Sydney, would you like to introduce ShiftKey and Cove?
Sure. So I am Morgan Evans. I am the Communications and Events Coordinator for ShiftKey. We are also an organization situated in the Faculty of Computer Science at Dalhousie, and we really help students across Nova Scotia upskill in tech. So from like workshops, from like networking conferences, to kind of courses or certificates. We're there for like beginners and experts and everything. And yeah.
I guess I'll go next. Hello, everyone. I am Sydney Silver, and I am the Training and Education Coordinator over here at COVE. We also have Jenna Hamper in here as well, who's the Career Pathways Coordinator at COVE. Our mission statement is COVE champions commercialization of marine technology by bringing people, ideas, and opportunities in one place. What that actually means is we provide the facilities, opportunities, feedback, and expert advice and services to help people, organizations, researchers, and students like you to succeed in the marine sector, work on tech, improve tech so that you can either bring it to market or use it to do further research on the ocean. We provide services for many different types of people and organizations. And one part of that is working with post-secondary students through working on a challenge like this, working on a challenge we call the Floating Wind Challenge. We also have an internship program, and we provide on-site tours and career exploration as well.
Fun
Back to you, Agastya.
factoid. Agastya, if I break in really quick, the
Yes.
first hackathon OTN ever collaborated on with anybody was with ShiftKey Labs. Once upon a time, it was a trackathon, and that's actually what got us so excited to come back, is to see what other new ideas come out of this. Another fun factoid that I'll throw in while I'm killing time waiting for our last speaker to come is that the second place winner of that hackathon is our current database manager at OTN. She ended up taking a full-time gig with us. So, yeah.
Oh, that is really cool. And yeah, I also wanted to give a shout out to OTN for all of the amazing work. This challenge wouldn't have been possible without them. So thank you so much for joining, for like making this happen. I'm gonna move forward now. Oh, yeah. So the theme for this Ocean of Data is our living ocean ecosystems. Participants will address the ultimate question: how can you present animal movement data in a way that conveys the experience of these individuals and informs the data consumer in a way that is both accessible and meaningful? How can we mobilize this data to help the audience understand not only what is happening beneath the water, but also their role in helping to conserve our aquatic spaces. We are now going to move on to the speaker presentations. Participants, feel free to send any questions that you may have for the speakers in the chat. I hope, did Rob join us yet?
Let me check it out. He's on his way. He has to find a place to put down his vehicle. He's going to join
Okay.
us from the road. He's on his way to DFO in St. Andrews.
Oh, no worries. Then I think we can just move forward until he is able to join us. But for tonight, we have 4 incredible speakers who have volunteered their time to share their experiences and insights with us. We have Dr. Rob Lennox, who will be joining us shortly, who is a scientific director at OTN, Dr. Harry, who is an aquatic biologist at Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Adam, manager of glider operations at OTN, and then finally John, the director of the data operations at OTN. I would also like to give a special shout out to John, who has been instrumental in making this possible and for all of his hard work and dedication. So thank you. We were going to move on to Rob, but I think we can straight away go to Harry, if that is okay. I would like to invite Dr. Harry, who is an aquatic biologist specializing in fish movement, trophic ecology, and niche plasticity. At DFO, he works with the Bedford Institute of Oceanography, where he tracks fish movement and manages acoustic telemetry data. Over to you, Harry.
Hello, yeah, I can jump in. I'll just need to share my screen somehow. I'm not used to, okay, here we go. How's that? All right, everybody can see that. Good. Okay, so I work in the Marine Conservation Research Group at the Bedford Institute of Oceanography with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, based here in Dartmouth. And we do work conservation areas in the Maritimes region, conservation research and monitoring. We establish sites, so marine protected areas, marine refuges, areas of interest for conservation for future potential designation as conservation areas. Various tools for monitoring, biodiversity being a key aspect of that monitoring. We use environmental DNA sampling. We use traditional survey methods like using various fishing nets and long lines and trawl survey data. And we use acoustic telemetry. And so we deploy arrays of receivers which detect the fish with tags inside them. And we do some tagging of those fish as well, put the tags in ourselves. And Rob will go in detail, I think, or cover some of that on how this technology works. But in the picture you can see there on the cover with the yellow floats, that's some moorings that we're getting ready to put out in the Eastern Shore Islands area of interest on the south coast of Nova Scotia. So just a bit of an overview on DFO's role with acoustic telemetry. DFO is involved in a lot of telemetry projects across the country, and a lot of those are uploaded to the Ocean Tracking Network, where it is available for download for people who are involved in the project, and some of those projects are open access, and I'll talk about those in a bit more detail as well. So if you go to that link there, that website, you can see a sort of initial draft of a summary of the receivers and tags that DFO is involved in and involved in with OTN. And this is drawing from records that are on the Ocean Tracking Network. And you can see all the different species that are listed that the projects are involved with, and which I've provided a plot there using updated code from that site. And yeah, there's a lot of different projects, and these projects have a lot of different focus in a lot of different areas, not just conservation research in my area, but in our area, I'll talk a bit more detail on how we're applying this technology. Some of our team members are using this technology now in internal tools within DFO, where the data can get transferred to managers and policymakers. We are the scientists, and so we work on the data and summarize it, and then it gets transferred up to higher ups who actually work on policy change. So this kind of data reviewed in processes like government advisory, processes like CSAS, which is Canadian Science Advisory, and we have meetings on specific areas, specific conservation areas, and also specific tools like eDNA. There hasn't been one on telemetry yet, but there may be one in the future. And that data gets summarized in those meetings, and a document is produced, an advisory document. It also gets summarized in technical reports and other publications, journal publications, and then there are some focus studies as well as those sort of general monitoring approaches. So just to focus in on our region, on the Maritimes region, the group I work in, the Marine Conservation Research Group, we have acoustic telemetry arrays deployed in areas along the coast here and AOIs, and we tag Atlantic cod and Atlantic halibut. This is one of the tools that we're using to co-develop monitoring approaches with Indigenous groups, with Mi'kmaq in Cape Breton, in our shared monitoring approaches in St. Anne's Bank Marine Protected Area. It's very accessible technology for sort of working together with multiple groups and co-developed approach. And we're looking at how this technology can be used for long-term conservation research and monitoring, how effective it is as a tool for addressing different indicators of conservation and of the value of our conservation areas. Some of the arrays and the projects on OTN, one of them is the Halibut project, which is specific to Atlantic halibut, and a team at BIO tag a lot of Atlantic halibut and put arrays in place in collaboration with OTN on the Scotian Shelf for tracking Atlantic halibut to understand their movement across fisheries boundaries and how where they might be spawning, and so we can better understand populations and help to make sure that we're putting in the right measures for managing those populations. In the Quoddy region, there's the PBSM project, which is a huge project in Bay of Fundy. On the bottom right, that's the grid of moorings in place in the water that have these receivers on them for detecting fish tags. And it's a very large area, very large grid that covers the Bay of Fundy. And that project on OTN started out in tracking fish in relation to aquaculture. And so that's another application of this technology, is trying to understand potential escapees from aquaculture, impacts of that, and interaction of species in relation to aquaculture. Skip on there. So just to zoom back out a bit here, this is our net conservation areas, and it includes proposed areas, so areas of interest in the Maritimes region. And a key question associated with this network is connectivity and how species move between these different areas within and among, how important different areas are for connectivity, for providing connectivity between different habitats, and being an important pathway for species between different regions. and important habitats. So there's finding innovative solutions and technology that can be used for understanding this connectivity, and also for monitoring it long term, for monitoring these areas over a long period of time, and effectively with minimal cost, because different governments put in place different costs for conservation, and so we need to have methods that we can use consistently over time. These are some of our arrays in the maritime region. We've got a line of receivers there in St. Anne's Bank MPA, which is the top right blue polygon in that map on the right. And then we did have a line of receivers that was in the Gully MPA, and then a line of receivers that was in the Eastern Shore Islands AOI, which is on the coast of Nova Scotia. There's also some receivers in Musquash MPA, which is a very small marine protected area that's estuarine in the Bay of Fundy. So getting into how we look at this data and what we do with it, just getting with the Ocean Tracking Network, because this data goes up on the Ocean Tracking Network, and then it all gets combined with all of the other project data that gets put on there from different people that tag all these different species. We get back detections from these different species. Well, our receivers pick up the detections, and we get back the species ID for those detections through our collaboration with OTN. And so just getting a simple look at this data, we get the different species that were detected in an area, and this helps us understand the biodiversity of the area and how it changes over time. So confirmed species, for example, in Musquash from this technology were Atlantic striped bass, Atlantic salmon, American eel, and the great white shark, because tagged and then subsequently detected on our array of receivers. And then another way of looking at this data, this is called an abacus plot, where we've got the detection date on the x-axis, and then the tag ID, the individual tag that was put in the fish that identifies each individual fish, on the y-axis. And we're looking at here the detections of white shark over time, and seeing that there's actually cycles of the same individuals returning to the same system. And so we get an indication of how important this area is for those individuals returning. And then we can look at this in terms of connectivity, the role of an area in connecting species, multiple species through time. So we can look at potential overlap in these species, how that might relate to competition, predation, and overall factors contributing to our understanding of biodiversity in an area. We've got a seasonal plot here on the right showing the different species that occur throughout the year, and then we've got this spatial plot map on the left showing how far away some of these species came from. One of them being the leatherback turtle that was tagged in Costa Rica that was detected in St. Anne's Bank Marine Protected Area. So there are different indicators that tell us about information about these conservation areas, and we look at these indicators to help guide us in terms of the science that we do in the monitoring and how we might use this data. In St. Anne's Bank specifically, we tag Atlantic cod and Atlantic halibut. We go out and put these tags in the fish and release them again. So we've got release locations from the metadata there on the maps on the right. And that information is useful for telling us how far these fish have traveled. The receivers that we use also record bottom temperature hourly, and that is really valuable information for our modelers, climate modelers. In St. Anne's Bank Marine Protected Area, there's also habitat information that may be available for other areas as well, that we can use as a covariate in our analysis of what's maybe driving the movement of individuals. temperature and depth, and then there's different zones of these conservation areas as well. And so it's interesting to us and important how much movement there is between these different zones, because different zones have different regulations. The main zone, the biggest zone in St. Anne's Bank Marine Protected Area, for example, has no fishing allowed, but some of the other zones have some kinds of fishing allowed. And so understanding how much fish are impacted in general in the conservation area in relation to their movement between zones is really important. And just an example of some movement here from the data, we've got Atlantic cod that we tagged and other project tags. They moved between St. Anne's Bank Marine Protected Area and into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and they do this seasonally. But we have some individuals that stay in the conservation area throughout the year. So this tells us how important the area is for the protection of this species at different times of year. So this could tell us potentially the value of the regulations for no fishing in the area. And then looking at species in general, as I mentioned before, this information is important for our assessment of biodiversity and the value of these conservation areas for protecting biodiversity. And there's a lot of different species that are tagged in the Atlantic region and beyond that we detect. And we also see the frequency of detections of those species, and we can look at the number of individuals that were detected. That tells us a different parameter, how many are returning, and whether they are actually migrating through or hanging around. What's their residency period? This is that map in detail here showing the scale of detections, how far away these species moved from to be detected in St. Anne's Bank. And then I mentioned indicators, the importance of those. Indicator 21 in a report by Kensington, which I reference later on, show you the actual citation, refers to the fluxes of fish and other nekton across the boundaries of MPA. And so showing how our data contributes to the understanding of this indicator helps us show how valuable this technology is for monitoring, for research and monitoring and conservation. The data can be broken up into how fish spend their time in the area, and a lot of that depends on how much data we have for different species. For some species, they've been tagged for a very long time, have these programs, for example, bluefin tuna, white shark, and so we're able to see potentially long-term trends in how they may have changed in their occurrence or where they may be occurring. Whereas other species, there is more sporadic tagging that is done, and so we're not able to look at those trends. One other factor that the data showed us in St. Anne's Bank was the value of different habitats, and specifically the different shallow banks in the conservation area. Scalery Bank was shown to be important for different species. And so if you have a placement of receivers, it's all dependent on where the receivers are placed. If you have them placed over a range of habitats, then you could look at the role of habitat in driving where the species occur. Some of the considerations here from St. Anne's Bank as an example, as we come to the end of this talk here, we've got from the data that we looked at, it helped us show us some of the gaps in our understanding of the conservation area. For example, the really deep areas where we didn't have many receivers placed, and we had a gap in understanding there. And this is true from other data as well, from like trawl data, It's not as well covered as other areas of the MPA, and so it could be a place where we focus more attention on in the future. Addressing different study designs is a really crucial question in terms of how useful is this technology for long-term monitoring and effective and efficient and affordable monitoring. We saw that shallow banks were key features, and this connects with a network objective for conservation research and monitoring. And those network objectives can be found online in when you go to a different conservation area. There are different management documents that are available, and then you can look at the different objectives that the government has for monitoring those areas. And often there are specific objectives for different conservation areas. Often they're quite broad, like monitoring of biodiversity to protect biodiversity, but sometimes they're quite specific on to protect specific species. Just some ideas here, drawing back from the talk on potential metrics that can be drawn from this data to be used in conservation research and monitoring. I mentioned just looking at the number of individuals that we get, those individual counts. You can look at when species arrived, when they departed, to get an indication of the seasonal shifts in biodiversity. The latitude latitude detected is a simple way at getting at the spatial use of the species in an area. Residency time, how long are they spending? Are they just moving through, or are they actually spending time in the area? And then looking at different parameters like habitat use, temperature, depth, the role of these different parameters in driving variation in space use and the occurrence of different species. And then potentially looking at connectivity between different areas using approaches like network analysis. I mentioned the Kensington paper earlier. This is a report that listed a series of indicators to be used in conservation research and monitoring, and telemetry applies to some of these. And looking at these indicators is a really useful way of looking at trying to understand how this technology might be applied in conservation research and monitoring, and what value it provides, and what it can't provide, what its limitations are as well. So there we go, and that's the end of my talk. And yeah, I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Harry. That was great. It was especially cool to like hear about all of the cool projects that are like going on in Atlantic Canada. So there's like a lot of, I see there's like so much potential and so much work already going on. So it's like great to see all of the efforts that are like being taken to like better understand our ocean ecosystems. If you have any questions for Harry, feel free to like drop them in the chat, or you can drop them in the Q&A section. But thank you so much, Harry. That was like great.
Yeah, for sure. I hope I give people some ideas.
I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, perfect. That was Harry. Thank you so much again. And I think Rob has joined us now. Rob, I hope your connection is stable. But I want to welcome Rob, who is an associate professor at Dalhousie and the scientific director at OTN, where his lab studies movement ecology to evaluate animal performance in a changing world. That's enough for me, and over to you, Rob.
We might not have your microphone yet, Rob.
Is this microphone working?
Yes, it
Yep,
is.
got you.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Screen sharing is working.
Coming in any moment now. Here it is. We have it.
Nice. So thanks very much for having me. I'm one of several representatives that we have here from Ocean Tracking Network today. You'll hear also from John Pye, of course, and Adam Camo from our glider team at Ocean Tracking Network. And Harry gave a really nice overview of all the ways that acoustic telemetry is informing a lot of management in Atlantic Canada, and I think it's a really good example of how it's used not only here where we're working and living, but around the world. Increasingly, this is a technology that is a key part of ocean observation and management. And in this talk, I'll give a bit more of an overview about what OTN is, do, and how some of what Harry discussed and presented to you is managed and organized and coordinated a lot of times behind the scenes by all the folks here at OTN. So acoustic telemetry is a really collaborative network approach to science because you put these receivers in the ocean and you don't really know where the animals that you tag are going to end up. You hope that they stay within your area, but oftentimes they're highly mobile species like sharks or tuna or mackerel, Atlantic salmon, species that can move long distances. And when you're working in the ocean or in a large lake, an area where you might have other collaborators and colleagues, you know that those animals are going to swim into other people's areas. And the Ocean Tracking Network was envisioned as a way to make sure that all of this is coordinated and the tags that are being put out are not duplicated. The receiver locations that are being put out are widely known by everybody, and that on a relatively fast time frame, everybody can get all the detections that are tagged animals at common places or in a common place in a data system. So Ocean Tracking Network was started as this global aquatic research and data management partnership, and is headquartered here at Dalhousie University. And for over 15 years now, OTN has been deploying acoustic telemetry infrastructure and maintaining the global network of acoustic tracking data for the community. And I'm lucky I get to wear two different hats, both as scientific director of Ocean Tracking Network as well as a researcher that conducts a lot of this work. So I not only get to help build the infrastructure and contribute to the the vision of Ocean Tracking Network, but I also benefit from Ocean Tracking Network with the research that I do. So I'm one member of a global community of researchers, not just here in Atlantic Canada, but in the United States, in Europe, in Australia, all around the world that is tracking animals and trying to see how asking questions just like you saw from Dr. Pettawade. And the knowledge generated by all this is really facilitated by having this common platform here at Dalhousie and with the OTN that merges all of these detections and provides access to investigators about the information of where their animals are moving in the ocean. Harry again gave a really nice overview of this question, or an answer to this question of why track. So we want to fill knowledge gaps in animal movement. The field of study that I consider myself to be in is movement ecology. So trying to understand where and when and why and even how animals are moving. And these can be this information is not only fundamentally important to understanding the world and the environment and the animals that live in it and the dynamics that are occurring right before our eyes a lot of the time, and sometimes way beyond our eyes. That's the amazing thing about telemetry, is we can observe things that we just simply will never be able to see without an electronic tracking and monitoring device. And Harry gave a really nice overview of how these data can go beyond just the fundamental understanding of the world and into actual management for organizations like Fisheries and Oceans Canada. The halibut that are tagged here in Atlantic Canada, the mackerel, are directly informing fisheries management for these species. Harry and his team and the Maritimes region are working on the design of marine protected areas and monitoring marine protected areas using telemetry data. We're working with partners that are doing impact assessments for coastal and offshore energy infrastructure. We're studying endangered species that are not really very well understood, like white shark, Atlantic salmon, Atlantic whitefish, and many others. We're looking at wild fish interactions with farmed fish in the aquaculture industry, which is an increasingly important part of coastal industries, especially in Nova Scotia. We're looking at environmental conditions and prediction of the future animal distributions to understand how things are changing in the world. We're assessing habitat repairs and the fate of hatchery fish, and we're also engaging the public. We work with something that a lot of people are interested in, and we get very visual information out of these studies, so we can actually share this information with the public and with people, and they immediately understand it. It's not like some forms of scientific data that are very difficult to explain to people. You can show people a map of how a seal or a lobster is moving, and it's very intuitive. They can see with their own eyes what kind of data you're collecting. It's amazing. So how does this all work? The electronic devices that we depend on are the acoustic receivers, and at number 5 here you can see a diver that is at the bottom of the ocean servicing this receiver, changing a battery. That receiver is always placed there, always listening for tagged animals. Importantly, you can only get data from tagged animals. So you have to interact with them. You have to catch them, or you have to find some way to get a tag on or in them. Looks like to be some sort of snapper that's tagged, and it's sending a signal to that receiver that's being recorded. Let's see if I can get a laser pointer going here. Laser pointer, nice. So this snapper-like fish is sending that signal. Adam's going to talk to you about the slocum gliders that are also listening for those tagged fish. So when we're running missions with our slocum gliders, they're out there listening for animals. Our wave gliders, that they're not diving, they're up on the surface. They're also listening for tags. But they're also offloading receivers. They're able to interact with receivers from the surface and then relay that information via satellite back to the office. Over here on the left side of the figure, you can see a lobster that's been tagged. You see the tag attached to the animal. It's sending out those signals, and as long as it's within range of one of those acoustic receivers, that receiver is going to log it. That diver or that glider is going to offload it. We also put receivers on seals sometimes and large animals. So that seal is listening for, not only listening for the tags. You see this turtle and this seal are listening to each other. This seal is sending those information back to the receiver as well. Or sorry, it's sending its own information back to the receiver. So it's both transmitting and receiving data. And when you look at the big picture, you think of all the species in the ocean, you think of all the places where we're able to put out these acoustic receivers, you can start to see how we've really developed a strong and capable network of asking the key questions about the ocean that really there's no other way to answer them. So these are all acoustic tags. The acoustic tags are really powerful because satellite signals can't travel through water. So if you're lucky enough to work on birds, or you work on zebras or wildebeest or reindeer, you can put a GPS device on them, and they'll interact with the global navigation and satellite system that connects to your phone or a GPS device or a vehicle, and we can take advantage of that on land. But it just simply doesn't work under the water. It doesn't transmit information through the water. So we have to rely on other technologies. In freshwater, you can use radio telemetry. It sends radio signals with a code, but in saltwater, you can only really use acoustics because the radio signals dissipate in the saltwater. So these acoustic transmitters depend on the ocean soundscape and the ability of sound to travel really efficiently through water. So manufacturers or industries have developed these sound channels that work really well in the ocean, and the tag emits a series of pings. It gets detected by this listening device and logged on board, so that when you go and download it, you get a list of all the tags that have been heard, the timestamp and the date for when it's been heard, and you as the investigator knows where that receiver's been placed. So when you pull it up, you know where you put it, you know which tags are detected on it, and when you put all the different receivers together, you get a really clear picture of how the animals moved in the environment. How they're moored makes a huge difference. So you can see that there's a metal plate here holding up this receiver, and then a buoy that's suspending it in the water. This is a special kind of receiver with an acoustic release. So this can get called up to the surface by a boat. So these can be hundreds of meters deep, and you can't really send a diver that deep. So you just send a sound signal from the surface. It connects with the unit and says it's time to let go. It lets go, and this float will bring it up to the surface, and you can get the data off it. But we work a lot with different partners that put receivers in all sorts of different places. So we can put them on oceanographic buoys, we can put them on docks and wharves, we can put them on a sand screw and a shallow tidal flat. There's lots of different ways to moor these. And they only have about a year of battery life. So every year you want to get back to them, offload the data, put a new battery on, scrape off any mussels or algae or tunicates that have attached to it, because they can affect the listening, and they can also make it too heavy for the buoy to bring it up. So you scrape that off and put it back down and keep listening for another year. Gliders are really changing a lot of the ways that we observe the ocean, and I won't give too much away because Adam's gonna share a little bit about this. But you can see this receiver that's been attached to the glider, and so it's always listening as well. We run these gliders for a wide variety of missions, and they're really the most capable oceanographic devices that I've ever seen. You can run them completely remotely. We have pilots sitting at home or in the office that are directing where this unit needs to move in the ocean and making sure it keeps on course. We instrument it with a wide variety of different sensors that are listening and measuring. And when we get this back, we distribute the data and archive it so that people have access to things like ocean noise, ocean temperature, ocean acidity, currents, flow. These gliders really are transformative because they collect such a wide variety of data very efficiently and we don't need to send people out for long trips on very expensive ships. So really amazing technologies that are opening up many new avenues for exploring and understanding the ocean. So at OTN, what we do is we track, we support the infrastructure piece of this by putting out receivers for the tagged animals to be detected. We connect, so we ensure that all these receivers that are put out in the ocean are able to connect back to the researchers with the information about their tagged animals that they need. And then we're transforming, so we're using these data and facilitating partners to make transformative conclusions and funnel these back into management. Again, how Harry really showed you the way that these data are informing key questions that the government has about how these aquatic ecosystems are functioning. So we've contributed to over 90,000 tagged animals around the world with over 1,000 contributors and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of species tracked globally. And this is everything from lobsters and mackerel and small little Atlantic salmon and freshwater species to basking sharks and white sharks and porbeagle and some of the largest animals in the ocean are tracked and in OTN's database. And our gliders have covered about the equivalent of halfway between the Earth and the Moon. So the glider missions that we run with these Slocum gliders and the wave gliders are covering massive distances collecting data. And that's a really quick overview of Ocean Tracking Network and how we're using these assets that we have to support research here in Canada. We're funded by the Canada Foundation for Innovation through the Major Science Initiative program. We're supported by Dalhousie University. We work very closely with Fisheries and Oceans Canada and Transport Canada, and they provide matching funding for a lot of work that we do. Research Nova Scotia supports a lot of our infrastructure and equipment. We've worked historically with NSERC and to leverage the equipment towards research. And we're also a project of Marine Life 2030, and all of our data goes back into the Ocean Biodiversity Information System once it's open to the public so that it can be used in larger multi-investigator synthetic analyses to look at species together over time. Thanks so much for having me. Really hope this was helpful to understand what we do at OTN and why we think it's really important and valuable, and really looking forward to seeing how this can contribute to this initiative.
Thank you so much, Rob. It was really nice to hear like what OTN is doing, especially, like the fact about filling in the knowledge gaps to like better understand our oceans. And so, we can use that data to then properly conserve the species or to use that data to better use that data.
Well, you can only imagine how difficult this would all be without a common tracking infrastructure as the backbone of it, like sending around data files to your friends to be like, did my tag 10175 get detected on your receiver in 2023? That you'd never get any responses, you'd never have any idea where animals are moving. we really, like, as a researcher, we absolutely depend on this ability to have this connectivity and this common infrastructure and tracking database that coordinates everything and keeps everything clean and tidy and gives everybody access to the information that they need.
Yeah, it does sound like it is like, even when you were like talking about it, it was like really cool to see how tracking isn't just like looking for an animal, just like placing the tag on it. There's like so many components and like issues that you have to like figure out to make sure that it's like actually the tag is compatible with the animal, that it's like properly working, and then there's so much data and so much work that goes into it. So it's like really cool to see how OTN has this like whole structure, and it's like so properly structured and organized to see and like connect, then like share that data with like people to like make it publicly available so other researchers and other like collaborators can use that data.
Yeah, well, we have an absolutely amazing data team that makes this possible.
No, that is really cool. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat, or just like you can put them in the Q&A. We do have a question actually. Is there systems to get mooring data without manually offloading it?
So what I think the best answer to that is that we can use the gliders to remotely offload some of the data. And we do have some, like a couple of live buoys that actually have a satellite uplink. So the receiver will send the data from the bottom of the ocean to the buoy on the surface. The buoy on the surface has a solar panel and a satellite connection, and it can send those data. But those aren't very commonly used. And interestingly, that was kind of the subject of a recent grant that we put in. So if that's successful, we'll be buying more of those and making those available to the community so that we can start to get a little bit more real-time data into the hands of investigators and managers.
No, that is really cool actually. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And thank you so much again, Rob, for like joining us. I know you had like a really busy day, so thank you for like taking like the time out of the day to like join us here today.
Anytime.
Um,
I love talking about this.
it is really cool. Moving on, we are now moving on to Adam, who is the manager of glider operations at OTN. He has served as a lead technician on more than 70 missions along Canada's east and west coasts, assisting researchers with glider setup and test missions. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you. I'll just start my screen sharing here. All right. So as Rob mentioned, the Ocean Tracking Network also has a glider program. And I manage this, and we've got two types of gliders. We've got the Slocum glider here in yellow. It's one that dives underwater, and we've got the wave glider here, and on the other picture, it's kind of brown. It's surfboard-like, and that glider stays at the surface. And I guess this talk is just to give you a little bit of an overview of what gliders are so that if you choose to look at the glider data, hopefully you'll have a sense of, how to make sense of it. And before I keep going, is my screen sharing good? You're seeing full screen of the actual what you're supposed to see?
Yep.
We got you.
Okay. So this is a partial image of our fleet. We've got 11 Slocum gliders. Those are in yellow there, and then we've got 3 wave gliders, and 2 of them can be seen in this image. And we do have lots of spare parts to keep these machines going. So we've got our core fleet with lots of spares, and those are quite needed. Our glider shop is not at Dalhousie University. It's actually in Dartmouth at the Cove. And this is a couple of screenshots of what it looks like in the shop. We've got a prep area for our Slocum gliders, prep area for our wave gliders, and even a ballast tank. So we can, for the Slocum gliders that go underwater, we can actually weigh them in seawater before we put them in the ocean and make sure they don't, sink to the seafloor or stay at the surface or anything like that. We fly our missions predominantly around the Maritimes and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. But in the middle picture, you can see there's a couple of track lines way up north in Baffin Bay and off of Labrador. These are a couple of glider missions we've done over there. To the right, there's an image of Vancouver Island. We did a couple of missions off of there as well many years ago. But you know, the image to the left is the bulk of our missions, you know, in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, around Halifax and Cape Breton and so on. And all of these black lines are either Slocum glider tracks or wave glider tracks. They're just all combined together. But to get the gliders on mission, you know, collecting data, somebody has to go in the ocean to put them in. And so we've got a Zodiac that will drive out to different field sites wherever we're going, you know, whether it's from Quebec to Cape Breton type of thing. We'll hop on the Zodiac, go offshore, put the glider in the water. You know, there's a picture in the middle there where there are 4 gliders in the back of a truck. We drive them around, we hire boats. We go out on boats and put the gliders out. We do a variety of ways. We use whatever resources we have access to get the gliders in the water. And then once they're in the water, we leave them there for several months. And then, you know, at some point we'll go back, we'll direct the gliders back to shore and we'll go back and pick them up again. But just to give you a bit more of a sense of what Slocum gliders are, as I mentioned earlier, they're underwater gliders. They're kind of like robotic submarines. Although unlike submarines, these are not primarily driven with a propeller. They've got a buoyancy engine to make themselves move, and the buoyancy engine will, you know, essentially change the volume of the glider by moving a piston or an oil bladder out or in. And when your glider volume changes, the density changes, and you set up the glider ahead of time. So it's roughly the same density of seawater. So when your buoyancy engine moves, it makes your glider either lighter than seawater, and in that case it'll float up, or heavier, and then that case it'll sink down. The manufacturer of these gliders had a cool trick. So instead of going straight up or straight down, they go on an angle so that every time the glider profiles the water column, it goes horizontally a little bit. And then the same thing when it goes down. So it does this sawtooth pattern, you know, by going up and down. And every time it does that, it moves forward. And the reason that's really cool is because these are battery powered systems and they're not rechargeable when they're at sea. So as soon as you put it in the water, you've only got a certain amount of days to remain at sea. And by having a propulsion system that only needs to move once at the surface and then once at depth, you can really maximize your energy budget and take it away from propulsion and put it into, you know, your flight computer, your science computer, your sensors that you're using to log data. You can use it for other things. And all of these gliders are platforms to collect data in the ocean, and they can collect a wide variety of things I'll tell you about later, but the focus is using the battery for the other things, not the propulsion. Now, these gliders can stay at sea for our record is 6 months at a time, but there are users around the world, other users that use these type of gliders, and they have records that are closer to 12 months. So they're long endurance and they're pretty hardy. They can stay at sea for in really rough weather, and we've had gliders in seas with over 50 knot winds, which makes some pretty big waves. Here's just a video to give you some context of what they look like when they're being deployed. This is off of Cape Breton, where we hired a vessel. See, the glider is going to launch in the water soon. Getting them in and out of the water is still pretty low technology, but once they do really cool stuff once they're in the water. So the glider sunk down there. It's got to float for its first test dive. You'll see it come up in a second here. You'll see, yeah, there we go. You see a white kind of thing in the middle of the screen come up. That antenna there is what the glider uses to communicate with the surface, with pilots, sorry. So it'll do, you know, when we're close to it, we can use local radio communication when it's at the surface, but when it's at sea, and the pilots go home, it communicates over the Iridium satellite connections. So moving on to wave gliders, these are surface systems that have solar panels. They're kind of like a surfboard with solar panels, batteries, and computers, and a navigation computer. But the thing that makes them different than a surfboard is it's able to harness wave energy for propulsion. I won't get into too many details about that, but if you type wave glider in YouTube, there's lots of videos from the manufacturer that explain how it moves forward using wave energy. It's really cool. But these are, you know, surface vehicles. So if we put science sensors on them, it stays at the surface and just records in kind of one dimension in that sense, unlike the Slocum gliders, which profile the entire water column. But these can travel a little faster. I forgot to mention how fast Slocum gliders go. It's about 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers an hour. These wave gliders travel maybe 2 to 4 kilometers an hour. So both of these glider types are not really speed demons. But what they lack in speed, they gain in, you know, 24/7 constant movement. So they make up for it in that kind of constant time frame. But yeah, these are solar powered, so as long as there's sun, you know, you can fly these. We've got missions around 6 months long with our wave gliders. We are limited in the winter because there's not enough sun to keep these going. The wave glider needs about 13 watts of energy to run continuously, and you can only get so much sun during the day, so we're limited in that sense. But in the tropics, you can keep these out for year round. These again are remotely piloted. So when a wave glider's at sea, it's got its antenna system that communicates with the Iridium satellites. That signal goes to shore, you know, for pilots so that we can monitor the glider and so on. And again, these ones are also quite robust, surviving some pretty heavy sea states. Here's just an image. We've put a GoPro on our wave glider just to see what it looked like. This is a calm day. You know, it's actually very calm, you know, for ocean standards. We still got to find the GoPro with enough battery to turn it on so that we can turn it on and have video during a rough day. But of course, yeah, anyway. So when our gliders are at sea, they need to be piloted, both types. So we have eyes on the gliders. That means, you know, when our gliders are at the surface, we're dealing with Iridium communications. That's 2 to 3 kilobytes a second when we're lucky. It's closer to 1 kilobyte a second. But that signal is enough to send us the battery status, its position, you know, its latitude and longitude, some system diagnostics, some real-time live data from science sensors that are heavily subsampled. And all of that gets assembled into a website that's available for pilots so that we can really just log on to a website anywhere and pilot these gliders. This is just an example of our piloting interface for each glider type. They're just websites with lots of buttons on them. So now just to move in to finish off this talk and talk a little bit about, you know, the gliders and what kind of data that they collect. Hopefully if you get a sense of what they are, you know, these Slocum gliders are all about having receivers on them to detect animals. We've also got hydrophones that can be put on the gliders to listen for ocean sounds and detect whales. But we can detect, you know, sharks and turtles and all those things just because it becomes a mobile receiver at that point. And this is a map of just the different places where we've got glider tracks. So the orange tracks are all of our Slocum glider missions, and the blue ones are all of our wave glider missions. And the dots on these are different places where we've heard animals. Now, we've been operating gliders since 2011. We've done lots of missions, and we've had some pretty good coverage all over the Atlantic Canadian and Gulf of St. Lawrence areas. But you know, it's pretty safe to say that whenever you put a glider in the water with a receiver on it, you're probably going to hear something. Not always, but probably. And this augments the ocean tracking network's arrays of receivers that are fixed in the ocean, because these detections can give you like really cool data points where, you know, where they're not otherwise fixed systems. But the other data that these gliders collect are used for oceanographic research. We've got oceanographers in the Dalhousie Oceanography Department that study ocean currents, they study ocean chemistry, and we've got sensors that give you insights in those data. We've got researchers at the University of New Brunswick that are using gliders and their hydrophones to use to study whales. We collect data for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans for we send data to modelers to improve ocean current forecasts, weather model forecasts, and we work with local industry to test new sensors. These are some of the example of the glider sensors that we equip that we have equipped on our gliders over the years. Even there's a few here. The red ones are ones that you can find publicly accessible in our ERDAP. I think you've got a link to our ERDAP site. It's a data hosting site. All of these ones you should have access through there. Some of the ones that are in black are more niche sensors, or they're sensors that collect really high quantities of data. And to be honest, we haven't figured out a way to share them. Like the shadowgraph camera that's able to measure pictures of zooplankton takes a terabyte of pictures a month, and we have no way of serving that at the moment. Same thing with our vast quantities of passive acoustic data. But just to give you a sense, these gliders are equipped to measure throughout the food web, whether it's ocean mixing to currents to nitrate concentrations, that feed the phytoplankton, and then the phytoplankton that feed the zooplankton. And, they can measure lots of things. It's just a matter about what sensors that you want to put on them. And these gliders are mature technology with lots of different sensors that can be put on them. And just to give you one last example of, what's possible by analyzing a glider data set, this is, this map here is a glider track in white where the glider started in Halifax, crossed Emerald Basin in the middle, got to Emerald Bank, and then turned around and come back. And then the image with the colors on the right here is the same kind of thing where you've got time on your x-axis, depth on your y-axis. And this is a Slocum glider mission, and this is just showing water temperature. So you start off of Halifax here, and you've got your really warm water at the surface, followed by an intermediate cold layer of water, which is caused by some interesting physics, and then some really warm water down at depth. So this is the glider, going from Halifax to Emerald Basin to Emerald Bank, and you can see the whole water temperature structure of the water column using this type of data. That's all freely available on ERDAP. And it's just, and for anybody that looks at this data, you'll quickly find that there is a lot of data. These data points are not interpolated, they're just dots. But there's so many dots that it produces quite high resolution of data at this type of zoom level. But I think I'll end it there for my talk. Open up, and we can open it up for questions.
I have a question. Has there ever been a case when one of your gliders got, I don't know, like chewed off or something by some big animal?
Yeah. When we often fly wave gliders around Sable Island, and there are lots of sharks around Sable Island. And one year we noticed our glider just started behaving really. It was a wave glider, and it started behaving erratically, and it just started doing these loops and circles and flowing with the current. We didn't know what was going on, but we figured, well, it's not responding to our command. It's not going where we want it to go. So what we did is we went out with a boat to pick it up. And once we picked it up, we actually found shark teeth lodged in the rudder, the cable or the module that houses the cable that goes to the rudder. We found shark teeth in there. So we brought it back, and I believe it was a port beagle shark that actually bit our glider. So that's another way to track animals. It's, collecting the teeth that are lodged in your equipment.
That is really cool. I remember I went to COVE once. I think Sydney might know this, but I think we had like a prof thing. He was also like part of DAL, and he also like showed us like, I think he had like these gliders, and he showed us like the teeth of a great white shark or something. I don't know if it was the same
I
instance.
think it was Richard that showed us, but it was, yeah, like he showed us like the bites that were in the
Yeah.
piece. It was cool.
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times with the wave gliders, and I think there was one, it was a great white, and then another one, it was a poor beagle, and in both cases we had the teeth lodged in the plastic and fiberglass and metal so that we could actually get the identification. But yeah, we've got a few scratches, and we've got some unknown things that have happened to our gliders, which we think are sharks, but sometimes it's hard to tell because we don't always have cameras on them.
Wow. But it is so cool to see how like the gliders can like survive in all kinds of like situations except for like some instances like the shark one, but like in different weathers and can track all sorts of data variables like salinity, oxygen, and it's really cool to see how OTN has like come so far and just sharing all that data.
Thanks.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to like drop them in the chat or in the Q&A section, and we can like go over them as they come. All right. Thank you so much, Adam. That was like a great talk, and it was like so cool to see everything that is going on at OTN. Now, I think we will move on to our final speaker of the night. Yeah, John, our final speaker of the night is John, and he coordinates the global telemetry communities and building systems that integrate biologging data with international biodiversity databases to advance understanding of aquatic animals. He will also be speaking on the data available to you, and then will take us through the 3 competition streams and expectations for the submissions. That's enough from me, and let's hear from you now, John.
All right. Everyone see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I do data things for the Ocean Tracking Network. You've heard from Harry and Rob. They're some of our customers. Rob also happens to run the shop, but I run the data shop, and I'm here to give you guys a few hints on how to get started using OTN's published data sets. So as you heard through the other talks you heard tonight, there's 3 major data set types that you're going to be dealing with. There's the animal telemetry data, and that is mostly the locations and times of individual animals, where we heard them, where they were detected, or where we caught them to put the tags on them in the first place. You can get that data on the AirDAP server, you can get that data on our Geos server, or you can get that data on OBIS, which you've heard from Rob about already, the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. For Slocum glider tracks, you can find on the AirDAP server locations with depths, times, and the environmental data that they're collecting as they're profiling up and down through the water like Adam was telling you about. And then for the wave glider tracks, you'll find surface locations, times, and environmental data for the platforms that are navigating the waves at the surface of the water. I would strongly recommend starting with the data you find on OBIS for the animal telemetry data. It's been through a round of curation and summarization that will make it easier for you guys to work with it. That'll give you the big picture of what the individual animals are doing without overwhelming you with a lot of detail. We also have quality controlled that data as it was submitted to OTN to make sure it's as accurate as possible before we send it back, not just to the other researchers, but also publishing it for you guys. Quality control and data centralization, like you heard from Rob, that's very important because acoustic telemetry data is marrying together 3 different data inputs, not always from the same people. So you've got the acoustic receiver deployment history, and that's giving you the where, the location that those tags were detected at. And then you've got the actual tagging activity, that people putting the tags in the animals in the first place, that gives you the who, if you will, or the what. And then you've got the instrument that's recording when it heard those tag codes. So that gives you the when. You have to put all that together to get this animal at this time in this place. And so when the same person is not responsible for each of these 3 pieces, it's very important to have a level of quality control to make sure that everyone can trust the data they're getting back to us, that we're giving back to them. So that's why the Ocean Tracking Network maintains its data system. That's why we've built up these quality control routines, and we let everyone know that we'll do the best we can to get them the best quality data, no matter who is providing it. And this intercompatibility that we talked about, it makes it possible to use this data system to connect these independent efforts. So you saw some of Harry's maps, and you saw some of Rob's pictures. This is where OTN is listening. This is a map of where we're listening with our own owned receivers. But there's actually been hundreds of projects in Atlantic Canada, from the DFO maintained curtains in the Bay of Fundy and the Gulf of St. Lawrence that Harry was talking to you about. And then all these other small scale projects that just have their one little question. Everybody's contributing their monitoring effort back to the OTN. And then we get this global observatory of everyone's effort put together. And it's really incredible what you can do with it. Rob was taking you through some of it. Harry was taking you through some specifics on how it informs management. But the key thing to take away, I think, is that we have, all of us together, been listening in a lot of places for a long time. OTN lets us leverage that to best effect. And then OTN is a global network that is connecting together regional networks. So if you see some of our data takes you all the way down into the United States, that's because we have partner networks going all the way down the Atlantic coast, all the way into the Gulf of Mexico, all the way up the US river systems now, in fact. And then we have partners across the Atlantic. In Europe, we have partners in South America. We have partners in Australia and in South Africa that are also doing things the OTN way, publishing data back. So when you see the public data that's available, most of it is in Atlantic Canada, but there's some partner data that's available all over the place. I'm going to show you the global picture. This is where we're searching and where we're listening globally. So imagine, if you will, a fish that's moving through the global ocean that's a highly migratory animal. There's really nowhere coastal it can go that some one of us might not be able to find it. So let's talk about, that's where the data comes from, but let's talk about how you guys can get your hands on it. OTN is a part of the Ocean Biodiversity Information System. We're a thematic node of that network. We are supposed to add our animal tracking knowledge to the global understanding of marine biodiversity across all the different ways that we might have figured it out. So by putting our curated data into OBIS, and by you guys pulling it out of OBIS, you can have it looking and sitting alongside surveys, visual surveys, catch recordings, camera traps, any other way that OBIS has recorded of saying this species was here at this time. So we put our data next door to that and get a more complete picture of how animals are using the ocean. There are also software packages available to you in Python and in R that will let you access the data that you find on OBIS. So there's PyOBIS or ROBIS if you're an R or a Python person. There's also a mapper web portal that you can deal with interactively. So this is a picture of the mapper. If you use the mapper, you can break down by scientific name, by node, by many other features, like what is it you're looking for, and it'll give you a curated data set of just what you ask it for. And you can take that away and use whatever you want to visualize or to summarize or to analyze it. They also publish a Parquet file on Amazon Web Services on the cloud. So if you're a cloud user, you can actually grab the OBIS S3 bucket. You could hop over to Registry Open Data AWS and find out all about that data set and how you can use it. The OTN data is part of that data set, so you'll find us on the Amazon cloud as well. There are a few tutorials that OBIS publishes online on how to do that. So you can find some of those tutorials and they'll show you how to get started using their Amazon-based database. OTN also runs a GeoServer. This is an Open Geospatial Consortium standard data portal. Machines love it, humans maybe not so much. But you can access here a history of our station and our tag deployments, and you can get it back in any number of geospatial data formats. If you like GeoJSON, if you like shapefiles, if you just want a CSV, I won't judge. You can get it off of GeoServer. There's a tutorial that we've included in the supplementary materials for this challenge that you can get started with GeoServer. It'll show you how to download some data and what it's for and how to use it. It's again, not very user-friendly on its face, but with the tutorials, you should be able to pull everything down that you're looking for. Telemetry is about things happening in the same places over a long period of time. So there are some challenges with spatial data and visualizing it, but this is how you can see the extent of the network and where we've been listening over time. As you heard from Adam, OTN also hosts an AirDAP service. This is another data portal. It displays tracking data, metadata, similar to how GeoServer would serve it. It also has our detections of animals on there, the raw detections coming from the data sets that all the researchers are getting from OTN. So these are all the public data sets aggregated together and made available as a single AirDAP layer. That's the detection extracts layer there. It is a bit experimental. You'll probably break it. It'll probably be a bear to try to do things with. 100,000 positions that you'll find on OBIS might be 2 million detections in this data layer. You're forewarned now. You know what you're getting into. But air depth is also where you'll find other dense data sets that OTN collects. So when it comes to glider data, there's really no better way to serve this. Each mission that a glider went on is served as its own data layer. You'll notice that our Slocum gliders have both a real-time and a delayed data set. So what's going on there is that while it's live and it's out in the ocean, it'll transmit a subset of the data back, and then they'll publish it on the real-time layer. And then once we get it home, we can download the full data set without using the satellite network, and you'll get the delayed mode full resolution data. If you have the delayed version of the data, it's going to be far more detailed than the real-time version. If your application is depending on real-time glider data, if you're building something and you want to be able to access glider data in real time with it, be aware that you want to get used to using the lower resolution stuff. So use the real-time data sets as your example data. Otherwise, if you're just looking at the best picture you can, grab the full resolution stuff. Like Adam showed, this is the map of the glider tracks for all the missions to date, so 2011 all the way to 2025. We support a right whale monitoring risk mitigation program in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Our vehicles get equipped with whale call decoding instruments, and when they hear right whale calls, they'll surface, they'll notify officials at Transport Canada. They can review the calls, they can potentially take action based on what they're reviewing, so they can initiate low wake zones, they might temporarily close active fishery locations. There's a lot of ways to use constant presence in the ocean to potentially affect policy. And so part of our challenge tonight, as you'll hear, is not about what we're currently doing. It might be what's possible. So think about how to take what we can do and apply it to other ways. And like you heard from Adam, the gliders are also carrying acoustic detection instruments. These are all the detections they've captured over time. If you want to grab just the data from the gliders, there's a project code that you can use and subset on. It's called GDL. That is the glider project code. You can grab all the ones that were picked up, listened to by the gliders. And so Harry showed you an abacus plot. That's a very popular way of visualizing an individual acoustic data set. But I was going to use that as an illustration of just sort of what you can come to expect for the data format. So this QR code, and you'll get a link in the supplementary materials as well, talks to you about what all the fields mean in the data sets that you'll be dealing with. So this is they're mostly Darwin core, event core vocabulary, but that won't mean much to you. But here is a link to a page that will have field by field. What does this field mean? What does collection code mean? What does organism ID mean? Maybe you can guess what that one is. And then on the AirDAP layers, you'll find the fields for the animal telemetry are named, again, according to Darwin core. So you can use the same sort of answer key to figure out what the columns are. And you can find out on the OTN Data Portal how you should be using them. All right, so that takes us on to the contest itself. So we're proposing you poke around our data and our organization's capabilities, and you come back to us with ideas and innovations around one of these three big ideas: life below water, the blue-green economy, and the future of ocean observing. And embarrassingly, I'm going to have to switch presentations in order to continue, but let's see if I can do that seamlessly. You ready? How'd I do? Good enough. So life below water. It's all about how do we better understand the changing marine environment using this animal movement data. And so you saw some hints about how policymakers do it from Harry, but how should we do it? How do we respond to shifts in climate and current and sea levels? How do we measure the effects of a changing ocean on this movement? And how do we respond, or how should we respond to those changes? So what I'm looking for there is, use data and visualization techniques, sort of help me understand better what's going on in the ocean using my movement data, and try maybe either to affect a policy outcome or a public opinion outcome. So you're looking at how do you better use this data to evaluate what's going on in the marine protected area like Harry's group is doing? Or in the public, how do you increase awareness of what we all should be doing to keep the ocean healthy and full of life? For the second stream, the blue-green economy, the question is, how can OTN data improve trade, tourism, and the lives of coastal communities? And so questions there could be like, how does ocean data that we collect improve shipping, trade, tourism, or the lives of coastal communities? How does biodiversity monitoring and oceanographic monitoring help us explore ocean industries? So we heard about aquaculture, Harry's focused on, can we detect when aquaculture net pen escapes happen? Can we figure out, what are the effects of aquaculture pens on wild animal movement? But there's also offshore wind that's been in the news recently. There's tidal turbines in the Bay of Fundy. How do we use our ocean responsibly? How do we leverage our ocean industry responsibly? And then what bold new ideas could emerge if we could mix this ocean data with a little bit of creativity and tech in unexpected ways? This is a fancy way of saying, what haven't we thought of? What is an opportunity that we haven't explored with the kind of resources and capabilities that we've built? The last challenge stream that I have dreamed up is the future of ocean observing. What innovations do our autonomous vehicles especially unlock in the fields of science and engineering? So, they're pretty exciting, the gliders. I have to confess, I came out of the glider shop once upon a time. I was very excited to be doing that job. It's a very neat technology. It lets you do an awful lot at very difficult to reach places. So what are the innovations that this autonomous sampling might unlock in the future in the fields of robotics or oceanography? So can we think of new ways to interact with the ocean or measure the ocean? But can we think about new capacities that robotics advancements might bring us that might unlock new capabilities for our offshore platforms? And what does data at this high resolution allow us to do when it comes to data visualizations and science communications? I look at the plot that Adam shared with us, and it's very exciting to think that, over the course of a month, we've seen every piece of the water column from Halifax all the way out to the Scotian shelf break. It's amazing to contemplate. What can we do with that data? How do we move the minds of people using the advancements that we have in ocean observing? And that's it. I'm gonna take questions, but also I will hand back to Agastya to do the rules.
One sec.
Sure. You want me to keep going? I can screen run if you want.
Oh, I believe Morgan is doing the challenge rules.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I just have to share my screen.
I can also share my screen if that's more comfortable.
Yeah, it might be.
Okay, perfect. One sec.
Thank you.
One sec. Okay.
All right, perfect. So for the challenge rules, competitors must either own the rights to all software used in their project or have written permission from the owner. So this all has to be your own work. Submissions can range from an infographic to a machine learning module for predictions. Just surprise us, be creative, do as your heart desires, so trust your gut. Projects will be judged under clarity, creativity, potential impact, and technical difficulty. So keep that all in mind. You can participate individually or in teams up to 5 people. Submissions must not include any confidential information. So also keep that in mind for your final submission. Each submission must be at least in part based on animal movement data hosted by OTN and or OBIS, with the sources clearly cited in the presentation, infographic, or visuals. You must currently live in Canada and have an active Canadian bank account. So if you win, you can get the prize money. Competitors must also be a current part-time or full-time student at a post-secondary institution in Canada or have graduated from one of these institutions within the past 12 months. So both current students and recent grads apply.
Oh, one sec.
No worries. All right, for the final submission, to be eligible, each team member must complete a team member registration form, just so we have all of your information. Only one team member is responsible for submitting the following items to info@deepsense.ca, which are team concept submission form, a link to the recorded video presentation, and any additional supporting materials that may be needed for your project. You also must present your idea in a video that can be shared with judges. So it must be no more than 3 minutes long, and it could be uploaded online, such as a private YouTube link, which is preferred, of course. And feel free to use any format you like, whether it's a direct pitch to a camera or a narrated slideshow.
Okay, so now we're going to review the prizes. Okay, so as Morgan mentioned, submissions will be judged on design, completedness, technical difficulty, usefulness or business potential, originality, and also presentation quality. So clarity, creativity, and potential impact. So first place prize will be $500, second place will be $400, and then third place, as well as top technical design, will receive $300.
Perfect. And I will be covering the challenge schedule. So, of course, the first part of challenge is today, October 15th, which was our Ocean of Data Challenge kickoff. And starting from today until November 3rd, you have 2 weeks to actually work on and submit your project. And your project is due November 3rd at 11:59 p.m., no later than that. On November 4th to 10th, the judges will review submissions and then select our winners. And a few days or a day after that, on November 12th, the winners will be announced. Am I missing anything, Augusta?
I don't think so, but I do want to like mention once again that each team member will have to submit the registration form, but if you're like working out of a team, only one member has to submit the team concept form. So there's like two forms. There's the registration form which everyone will have to fill out, and after the webinar ends, I will be sending everybody like more details and everything, or a link to all of the forms. But just remember, everybody has to submit the registration form, but only one member has to submit the team concept form. And I think, yeah. And also, like, please make sure that the YouTube video that you share is like either like privately shared, or like it's on Vimeo. We will not be accepting any videos that we have to like download. Yeah, that's it. And if you have like any more questions, we're like here to answer them.
I was going to say, yeah, there is one in the chat. It says, what does it mean to own all software unless we have permission from the author? I am assuming this disqualifies all AI use, but what about other things like third-party libraries?
John, are you comfortable answering this question? Because I feel like this is like more of a technical question.
Yeah, I think what we want to know is that you have the right to reproduce what you make, and that you're not breaking someone else's terms of service by competing in this challenge. So for software, you're looking for share alike or like new based software licenses for things would be the safest bet. But if you have, commercial libraries, but you're producing a product, then the product has to be free for you to use. So the conditions of that license would have to let you take the products you're using and profit off of them potentially. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a computer scientist. So clear as mud.
No, that was great. Thank you. If you have more questions, like let us know right now. We do have another one. Is there a Discord server or Slack channel where I can find a team? So no, not really, but you have like 2 weeks to submit your concept. So I think you have like plenty of time to like, look around. You can also like reach out to us and maybe we can like talk something out, but we don't have like a server, like a Slack channel where you can find a team.
There's another question too. Oh, sorry, John.
I was gonna get it. Yeah, Amanda. Some of it should hopefully come from the Ocean Tracking Network. That's why we're here. Ideally it would be either our biodiversity data or our glider collected data. In the supplementary notes, you'll find our data portals, links to them and how to use them. There's a tutorial that one of our new employees, Demant Kumawat, he put up on how to use each of them. So you can follow those along. I will say that as you go, OTN also hosts a weekly study hall. So I show up from 2 to 4 p.m. on Thursdays like this, and I just sort of answer questions. And you can find the link to that on OTN's website. And yeah, drop in if you have questions on how to use the data. And we'll be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. There's a question that says, how do we make our team? So the challenge, you can either do it individually or like in a team. It's not mandatory that you are supposed to like have a team. You can also do it by yourself. But in terms of like a team, it's really like up to you how you want to like form it. You can like make it with your classmates or like your course mates, or like John mentioned about the study hall. You can always like go then if there's like more people there who are there to like get answers to the questions. You're also like just feel free to like chat with them.
Yeah, tell people who aren't here tonight that they have to be on a team with you and then win some money.
Yeah, and just like piggybacking on that, this I will be posting a recorded version of this webinar on YouTube. So if your friends or like your classmates, they couldn't join us tonight, they can always like revisit this later to just like get an idea on what this challenge is about. So yeah, you have like plenty of time and flexibility and just like opportunities to like make a team, or you can just do it individually. We have like a lot of folks who do it individually.
I also just want to say in like terms of Discord, I know we just like talked about that, but ShiftKey does have a Discord server, but we don't have an actual Ocean of Data channel. But if you would like to reach out to other people who are there like individually, go right ahead. Yeah.
There's another question that says, will the recorded video be up? Yes. The recorded video will be up like of tonight. It'll go up on YouTube, and it'll also be I'll also update it on our DeepSense website tomorrow or probably tonight, depending on how long the stakes. But yeah, you should be like able to view this video once this webinar once it's done.
And I'll share the slides as well.
Perfect. Any more questions? I don't think so we have any more questions, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to all of our speakers, to the COVE team, to the ShiftKey team. Thank you so much for like making this happen. And to our participants, we're really excited to see what you're gonna come up with. We have like a lot of like cool and really innovative ideas every year, and each year people just like keep surpassing the previous challenges. So we're excited to see what you're gonna come up with. I hope everyone has a good night, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a rest of your have a great rest of your night and weekend. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much,
Bye.
everybody.